All right, everyone. I thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have a special presentation with Tony Chiappetta here from CHIPS Cybersecurity and from a special guest from the Threat Busters podcast. This is going to be a roundtable discussion on the intersection between information security and AI governance. So I'll welcome everybody for being here. Thank you for taking that time and thank you for signing up. If you are here live, we're actually going to make this kind of an interactive roundtable as we quite often do. If you are joining us on the replay, you missed it. You should have been here live, but hopefully you'll be watching this little platform where there'll be a comment section where you can please feel free to contribute and share some insights, comments, suggestions, remarks down below. So this roundtable, this webinar series is brought to you by the Cognify Insight Network, part of Cognify Solutions. Cognify Insight Network is a community that we are building with the intentionality of ensuring that the big questions around AI and AI governance of how we use this technology, how we use it with intentionality, has not just one voice behind it. When we start to put out recommendations, and as we put out, I'll give you procedures and standards and other recommendations, that there is not just one CEOs behind this, not just one anointed board, but a community of folks who are affected by this, who are studying this, who are passionate about this, and that we want to make sure that's reflective in what's actually being put out there. As such, this is one of our roundtables. So we want to make sure that we're building this community with intentionality. It really is a community. So anybody that's here, we're going to have 15-second introductions, a little bit of a networking moment. Please give your name, your company, your location, and a fun fact. I suppose I'll go first. My name is Chris Feemster. My company is Cognify Solutions, part of Nexus Systems Incorporated. We hail from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, serving clients and partners world around. Fun fact for myself is that I think, and I will look forward to playing a game that is half run by ChatGPT, because as innovative as that is, that sounds like that might be absolutely hilarious. And I say that hoping a particular partner and referral partner watches this replay because that's related to work that they're doing. All right, so I'm gonna go around the room. I'm gonna call on Richard next.
Hi, everybody. I am also a partner in Cognify Solutions. My own company is RAS Consulting, law firm AI expert. I design automation and agentic solutions for law firms. Have a product out there called Trial Lift that we're looking to beta test in the legal space that automates trial preparation and the verification of information used in legal proceedings, commonly known as citations. New York City. So greetings and salutations. Fun fact, it's a long story, but my grandfather came to America in 1921, and I have the manuscript from Ellis Island, and he actually settled into an apartment next door to where I currently live. And I didn't know this until first year I moved into my apartment. I sent a Christmas card to my grandmother, his wife, and she almost had a heart attack when she saw the address. So it's another New York City, naked city story. But so the karma of my grandfather is still very much in proximity. So glad to be here.
Oh, glad to have you. One of those, I guess, only in New York moments, right? All right, next up, Charles.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the warm welcome. I'm Charlie Livings, and I am president and co-founder of Tip of the Spear Professional Coaching. The point of Tip of the Spear, obviously, is to prepare those folks out on the leading edge of your company to be able to provide that leading introduction to what the next thing is. And so we seek to empower them with the leadership skills and to take advantage of their curiosity to keep them on point, so to speak. Fun fact is, and we're out of Opelika, Alabama, but with the virtual space, now we are certainly nationwide and interact with folks, and especially veterans all over the globe, wherever they might be, to help them. Fun fact is that I've been to Boston, so I thoroughly enjoy Beantown up there and the wonderful cuisine, and looking forward to going back soon.
That's brilliant. All right, getting good travel recommendations here. All right, next up, Vinod.
Good evening, everyone. I've been in Boston area for over 25 years now. Was fortunate to work for some financial companies here all these 25, 26 years. I am looking for opportunities where I can help people currently, whether it's in cloud transformation, digital transformation, AI, implementing, enabling AI, like AI governance, data governance, establishing data foundations and things like that. Data foundation is critical for implementing AI, right? That's the first thing that companies should be focusing on. I see a lot of companies are pick and choose with some kind of a tools and implementing AI for a couple of use cases, and they're not being successful. They're not bringing AI into their core strategy, and that's one of the reasons why the companies are failing currently. There is a 2% success rate in the past couple of years, as per the survey from Big Fours. So that's I can come and help people. I can look at things with a different lens. So that's one thing I want to mention. The fun fact, I've been speaking in multiple webinars and events for the past several months. So I can bring some of the industry insights as well if somebody is looking for broader perspectives. Fun fact, last week I went to Banff with my family, Rockies. The whole week we were there. We did a lot of things. We saw, I don't know if you guys heard about Lake Louise and Lake Moraine, and we drove to Columbia Ice Field. We were on glaciers and we drank water from glaciers. They say if you drink water in glaciers, you're going to live another 100 years. I don't know if that's true, but so that's we did all of that. But one interesting thing was on the last day, my children wanted to do, my kids, like they are mid-20s, they wanted to they wanted to go for hiking, right? And they went half an hour ahead of us. We forgot something. We went back to the car, and in the meantime, they started going up. So we did not know like which path they took. My wife and I started walking. It's just 11 kilometers hike. It's some kind of a paved road. We started hiking. We were thinking our kids are ahead of in front of us. We went all the way for 11 kilometers. We did not find them. Right. And on the way, people were coming down, and we were asking, "Did you see like the four children walking up?" People said they did not see anybody. So we got panicked. There is no phone was not working. We did not have any kind of protection with us. We had just had one water bottle. And by the time we started around 3:30, by the time we went up there, it was like 5:30. And the light was going to be failing in 2 hours, and the last shuttle was at 6:30. So we did not want to take a risk, and we did not have money either. We had credit cards and things like that. So it was a little bit of a scary experience. It's a wildlife, right? People were saying like you may bump into bears or other animals, especially in the evenings. So without money, the shuttle guy wouldn't allow anybody to take shuttle. So we did not have any other option. We started walking down. That's another 11 kilometers. So we pretty much ran downstairs to reach the end point. So overall, it took 4.5 hours, but it was a scary walk going up, going down because my wife keeps putting pressure on me, run, and then. So I don't know if that's a fun fact or something. I'm just sharing an experience that I had last week. But
Well, did you
overall, we walked like 22 kilometers, about 13.6 miles in about four plus hours.
find them?
Yeah.
Yeah, like when we came down, they were waiting for us for the past
Oh,
for 2 hours.
they
They
left
took
you in
a
the dust. There you
they
go.
took a short trail
Ah,
somewhere in the middle, and they went in a different route. So they
they,
were waiting for us, and they could not reach obviously because the phones were not working. They were also
ah,
asking people if they saw if they
I
saw.
was about to say that
Yeah.
might be the fun fact. The fact that your kids somehow Mitch got down to the bottom, might have sent a search party out for you, and you're like, "Where are the kids?" And the kids like, "Waiting for you."
Yeah. Everybody that was seeing us, they were like, which planet these people have come from? They don't have a gear. We don't have a gear. We don't have all we have was the water bottle. We didn't have a bear spray. We didn't have any kind of hiking sticks or anything of that sort.
Wow.
Oh boy.
But anyway, so that was an experience, definitely.
Just say Dhanyavad.
Yeah.
Well, it was a
Yeah.
learning experience.
Yeah.
I'm gonna a quote. I will make a quote a little later that will be very, very prescient for that. Next up, second to last, but not least, Alan. Thank you
Oh,
for joining
I
us.
need
We're
a,
giving
can you get some
15
oat milk
60
creamer?
introductions.
Sorry I was late, guys. My apologies. I've been dealing with things all day, and I'm just starting a video series. But I am the founder and leader both of ADSC, a marketing communications group for tech companies from around the world, and as well as that, our interdisciplinary AI community. And I'm the founder and leader of that as well. And I've been in systems for about 30 years. And about 1986, I turned to myself and I said, how can I compete with massive tech companies with deep pockets and vast resources with small teams or no teams? And the only way to do it was AI. And since about November of 2022, it's become very realistic. That's what I do. I help people to become competitive. And basically speaking, that's a little what I do. Fun fact, basically, sometimes when I don't know what to do as a prompt and context engineer, I'll turn to my AIs and say, geez, I don't know how to program you. Can you help me out so that I can make a prompt to put in you? Is that enough, Chris?
You're muted, Chris.
Thank you. It certainly is. All right. Second to second before last, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. We're doing 15-second introductions. That'd be your name, company, location, and a fun fact.
Hey everyone, so my name is Nick Gibson. I am here in Tampa, Florida. My company is Gibson Cyber. We focus on preventative cybersecurity solutions. So I'm really happy to meet everyone. I'm super happy to be on the call.
Cool. By the way, I'm in Toronto. I forgot.
Indeed. Serving clients and partners world round. Well, this is mostly the Western Hemisphere, but still. All right, Nick, we'll take your fun fact is that you're happy to be here.
Oh yes, sorry about that. We're just getting done with family stuff, eating dinner and whatnot.
No
So
worries at all.
apologize for being late.
Are you
works.
white hats? Do you do white hat stuff? Is that what you do?
I do blue team stuff. So I'm a digital forensic and an incident response specialist.
Ah, blue team or red team? How far do you go?
Blue team. I don't really touch the red team side too often. I know a lot about it, but I like the blue team side.
There is a definite need for blue team people.
For the benefit of our listeners, what can we in layman's terms break that down?
Nick?
Yes. So the blue team are the defenders and the red team are the attackers.
Yes.
Ah, is
So-
that from?
Testers.
Oh, wasn't that the way it was with Battleship? Remember that game we used to play as kids?
Yes, very much is where
And
it comes
Rock'em
from.
Sock'em Robots. One was blue, one was red. So there you go.
You're not doing the penetration testing, you're doing the defense.
Yes.
Indeed.
Got it.
All
Cool.
right. And best for last, I will be introducing Tony formally in a moment, but Tony, go ahead and give a brief introduction in your own words.
Sure. Tony Chiappetta, Chip Cyber Defense Solutions, now headquartered out of Mount Juliet, Tennessee. Fun fact, we just moved from Minnesota down to Tennessee last month, just a handful of weeks ago, and excited to be here where our kids decided they wanted to escape the Minnesota climate for something a little better, and happy to be here now enjoying it with them.
Cool.
Indeed. All right.
And by the way, good luck, Tony.
Thank you.
That's
Indeed.
good. We're in good health, man.
So, our agenda and why we're here. We're giving this talk to discuss the intersection of AI and cybersecurity. We're going to have this is going to be a bit of a panel and also a bit of a live podcast style. Tony Chiappetta, is president of Chip Cyber Defense Solutions based in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. With over 20 years in cybersecurity, he helped pioneer managed antivirus in 2010 and now leads the commercial rollout of a U.S. government-grade security technology for small and mid-sized business. A Microsoft certified professional and InfraGard member, Tony is a recognized thought leader who hosts webinars and works closely with SLED and industry partners to advance cybersecurity awareness and resilience. Without further ado, I'm going to let you hear from Tony and myself, and this is going to be more of a proctored conversation, a discussion that if you have questions, we want to encourage you to raise your hand and jump in. We may even call on the audience as we have some of these discussion stimulus. Okay, some of these discussions. Without further ado, let's begin. You ready, Tony?
Let's do it.
All right. You can drop this share, switch views. All right. So with as a framing, I'm going to give a quick vignette, quick story. Early highway guardrails solved one problem and created another. Decades ago, blunt rail ends could spear vehicles. The turn down fix reduced spearing, but sometimes vaulted cars. So designs evolved again toward energy absorbing terminals that deform and dissipate force. Standards were updated to reflect a changing vehicle fleet with heavier SVUs and real-world impact angles. And DOTs began proactive installs like cable median barriers that dramatically cut cross-median fatalities. The lesson for us, I'll bring that home. Guardrails must be redesigned as conditions change and installed before the next incident and monitored so they reduce and not cause harm. AI governance and security guardrails should both work the same way. A wise man once said, "Wise men learn by others' harms, fools by their own." So, as we begin to unpack and get into the nature of that InfoSec beast and IT governance and AI governance and how all that wraps around, let's look first toward the endpoint. Let's first talk about where all the rubber meets the road, the user sitting on their machine. So a question I'll put out there. If we design governance from the endpoint and end user moment of truth, what changes first for leaders? Tony, what are your thoughts on that?
If you're designing from the endpoint and moving outward, you've got the obvious, what is your user going to need, right? How do we make them be able to do their job, be able to fulfill the mission that the organization has for them? But in today's terms, you can also think of it as the endpoint being controllable, being not only a tool, but being able, like you said, guardrails, creating a framework in which they can work, and also giving them only the capabilities they should have to do that job that they were hired to do. That not only hopefully makes them more productive, but keeps them out of the ditch if they were to go astray. Can be thinking about not only how do we create a productive environment, but how do we keep people on track?
Indeed. It's interesting because I would say there's a similar need and implication there for that AI governance. Because that's also that conversation around those shadow devices, because that starts to get into that as well. I think we're going to touch on that in a little while. But when you really need to show that effect from that end user interaction, it's a question of what's affecting their productivity as well. So when you have users in this scenario where you have a endpoint that has to be controlled, what does that look like for their productivity flow? And I think that actually leads into our next question. How do we end up protecting where this risk has to meet reality? How do we end up having additional controls and additional protections here without really killing velocity? And let's look at that from that InfoSec space, from that governance perspective, and from that AI productivity perspective. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to raise your digital hand. Tony, go ahead and take a crack at that.
Yeah, I think that's broadly beyond the endpoint there. If you think of it just in terms of bandwidth across an internet connection, we saw that slowdown in capability when, more and more filters were being applied to internet connections. You might have the fastest provider in the world, but if it has to go through all these different filters, it's going to slow that down as it delivers to your business, to the end users. That becomes a good question. How do you do that? How do you make sure that the device is within the guardrails, going back to the analogy, and making sure that it's not hampering productivity? That's part of the reason why we're such big advocates with AppGuard, because it's not filtering or scanning or controlling the actual applications. It's putting it within a box, isolation and containment, they call it, so that it's free to operate as designed, but it can't go off into the ditch and cause harm to the endpoint, to the device, that kind of thing. So it's creating the work environment with also putting up that wall that it can't go through.
I think that's an excellent example. And I see there's a question. I think that's an excellent example of how that rubber meets the road initially. And that's good feedback for how leaders are able to first look for where governance is going to really take hold and really start to put some of those tent poles for those metrics of what does more secure look like? What does this protection look like? How am I going to start to measure this? I think we had a question from Alan. Go ahead.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you, the isolation thing sounds pretty good. One of the issues is that I architect extremely advanced AI systems. If you have someone who's acting in that capacity, great, but not everyone is. And so just by the isolation, what you're doing is you're doing like a RBAC, like role-based access control. That way, I think, is what you're doing, right?
It's more the endpoint and the applications. So the users there, whether they're an administrator or a local user or whatever their role permission level is, doesn't matter. It's more considering that on the application level. So if the application needs to do certain things, like not every application needs to access the registry or call PowerShell to execute its mission, right? So if we do find one that has to have that extended capability, we're able to say, okay, your box is just slightly big enough to do that. It can run that one PowerShell command. It can read a particular registry key that you need to see. Not write to it, but just read it. And that way, the software as designed can still do what it needs to. The user that's using that software doesn't know the difference. It's the application itself that's being closed in and boxed in. So the user does their job as normal and is able to be successful in whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing. Now,
So you limit the resources. So let me just ask you a question. When you're dealing with an AI system, the AI systems are extremely intelligent. And one of the issues is making sure that people have different levels of where they can play in terms of what it can do. Now, it's one thing when it's an application, but when it's a prompt, it's a whole nother ball game. How can we deal with that?
if it's you're saying a prompt that you're entering into a browser or something like that?
No, a prompt that you're entering into some kind of development environment, and then basically you have the user interface separate from it in front of it, and then in the back end, what you've got is you've got a system prompt at the base of it, which is the heart of the application. So what it's doing is it's the application actually is the prompt, but you have other stuff on top of it. Now, what you're doing, I think if you're limiting resources in the way that you're talking about, that could be an effective way of dealing with it. You still have PII issues, like personally identifiable information issues and stuff like that you got to deal with. And that can be dealt with as you're building. But I'm just wondering, how would that deal with something like that's prompt based in terms of being an application? Because I think you could. I'm just wondering. From what you're saying, it sounds like I think you could.
You see, I'll try to add. Yeah, I'll try to add a little bit here, Alan. See, whether it's a prompt
you want to add something
or application, you have to implement some kind of a security layer, right?
Yeah.
which user is prompting a particular request. So if it is a manager or an employee or somebody else, a business specialist, depending on the role of the person, as you see the prompt, even the prompt may be seeking certain PII data, the
Yeah.
security layer will have to restrict that data, right? It has to prompt, it has to give the response back saying, hey, you are seeking some PII data here. You do not have you are not authorized to see the data.
Yeah.
You can
All right.
see this kind of a data, right? So you give the response back and give the least privileged data back as part of the response. I hope
Yeah,
that
resources are resources. It doesn't matter if it's a prompt or an application. They're still applications. What
right.
are your thoughts on that,
Yes.
Tony?
I guess I'm not sure how that would reflect within the application because we're more with AppGuard limiting the boundaries of the application. So if there's data sets available inside of that, it's going to be able to run based on how the application's designed. So I would imagine that with what Anand said, you'd have to be limiting even more so by a user
Yeah.
role or something with inside of that defined
Yeah,
perimeter. So
Yeah, Tony, if
you'd
I
have to
may.
have AI agents that are looking for those kind of breaches.
Yeah,
And,
secure
you know,
agents. Yeah.
Let's take this and bring
exactly.
it up a level because I think that's where we can really start to get a couple more toeholds in that conversation. Look at it from the governance level. It also aligns that with your infosec posture. We're looking on whereas we can specifically find triggers to go and say this user should have access to this or not, or this application, this prompt, this tool should have access to this or not. But that's not if that's not already a clear policy, if that's not already well understood in the type of governance you have for those data or that system, it's going to be hard to get any toeholds on that further down if you're not able to say, okay, let's map this out. If we map this out, we know where we're supposed to step. We know that in this system, we do have our back on this particular database or these particular columns in this database. So if this application, if this AI system is interacting with this particular database, let's make sure it's impersonating the user through that. Or maybe we don't. Maybe we know that this particular database does not have our back on it. It's a one or done kind of system. If that's the case, that we have this document and we're able to say, okay, we're going to protect access to the application because anyone who uses this application is not using impersonation. They're just going. So if we're able to understand that and our workflows and have that kind of documented, we're able to have that reflect our infosec position, our data governance position, and be able to say, okay, especially as we deploy these particular applications locally on from the client, whether or not that's on that desktop endpoint or on a server or elsewhere, that those same principles are going to scale. Is that kind of giving you some better toeholds to really get an answer for you, Alan?
Yeah, I think from an OSI level, both on level 2 and level 7. So in other words, the networking level and the application layer, yeah, there's still resources that can be governed and limited. Basically speaking, it would be very interesting, by the way, to see that happen at a field level in both a relational or a vector database. I would like to see that a lot. That would be something we'd recommend. So if you can do that, Tony, then I would find that to be very appealing. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I guess we'd have to look. I know from a more traditional database design of a SQL Exchange, those are constantly interacting with data. They're constantly having patches to close off vulnerabilities. And the isolation containment practice of walling in the entire application there is able to safeguard the data from those outside attackers, that kind of thing. So I would imagine there's a similar principle with the backend server designs that are powering the AI applications there.
I know in Oracle that you can go to the field level for sure.
Okay.
That I know for sure. So,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I don't know
Databases
about
are a
vector
good example
databases.
here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and refocus this a little bit. I think databases are a great example here. And I want to use that to illustrate a point where if we are able to focus on the end user, because ultimately most of these applications are in service of that. Focus at the edge and then scale to your teams and your systems, because you're going to be mapping the workflow of your data more closely to the workflow, your actual operational workflow of your users. And that's a great way to make sure that what is allowed or not, was authorized or not, is well aligned. And ultimately, if you have governance and frameworks that are well aligned, they tend to be better adhered to. I'm going to move us along to another question.
Thank you, Tony, by the way. Thank you.
Indeed. That I think helps to give us a little bit more tolls on that as well. What does that look like when we're starting to discuss these endpoint protection, user protection, what we're looking at around this governance piece of evidence? We can discuss like, all right, what these are policies, this is how we're implementing this. What do we actually look at as problems that we're solving, KPIs that we're meeting, risk appetite that we're addressing? So I'm gonna address that to Tony again. If you have questions or comments, go ahead. Keep putting up those hands. I'm liking this back and forth. What evidence from our endpoint systems and users can really convince the C-suite, convince the owners that we've met their risk appetite, that this is less wildly insecure than it was? Far be it for me to say we'll ever be 100% secure. Unplug the system, chuck it into the ocean. But otherwise, that we might be inside the risk appetite. Tony, I'll pass that to you first.
Yeah, that concept of how do we display or how do we quantify where the risk is? If we go back before all this technology stuff, the risk itself was the end user, that employee, right? And there was protocols and HR systems developed to make sure that you're hiring the right person, the background checks and all those things, right? And maybe it's now more of a expanding that similar thought process around, hey, is the supply chain that we're using, is it safe and secure? Is the hardware, the machinery that our organization depends on, is it dependable? Is it coming from a good source? That kind of thing. And that doesn't stop there. It continues on now to the applications, the cybersecurity, and now AI. I think similar frameworks of vetting that out. Where is it coming from? How do we know it's trusted? What verifications have we made before putting it into a production environment where now you find yourself trusting in something, but don't necessarily know if it can be trusted? And there's always things around that. But Richard?
Yeah, one question I'd like to throw out, I'd love to get your thoughts as I think about some of the risks that large language models present in general, but also where the intersection is between AI governance or AI security, InfoSec, and cybersecurity. Prompt injection, training data poisoning, insecure outputs, denial of services, supply chain compromise. These are all negative attributes that can rear up with improper use of LLMs. And much in the cyberspace, where cybersecurity has taught users not to open emails that may contain ransomware, viruses, and all these kinds of attributes. In the Gen AI space, and particularly with large language models, this is all virgin territory. Many people are not aware when they're exposing a prompt with PI data, I think as Alan mentioned earlier, or client-related data, HIPAA-related data. It's not just the inappropriate use of that, but what if the large language model is now learning from that information? So now that privatized information could become part of a public model. So there's many more compounding risks, I think, associated with misuse of AI that really, I'm curious from you, is where do you see the kind of the integration point with cyber? Or is AI a subcategory of cyber in terms of the overarching strategy for security?
I think that the AI and cybersecurity mix into where threats could jeopardize that information. But I think what you've been referencing is also more maybe part of the design, where it goes back to more of the governance thought of, okay, is this a closed system or is it not? And if it's not a closed system, that means we can only put surface level stuff in there that is okay to be publicly available, that kind of thing. And finding out about that prior to getting into production use of the whatever solution is being considered. But there can be, just like we saw with data centers and storing data in the cloud and that kind of thing, those systems themselves can be compromised. So we want to make sure that they're secured and they're protected from an outside bad actor taking advantage of some kind of exposed vulnerability and pulling that out. Or like you were saying, maybe it's data poisoning and they're injecting stuff that somebody would want in there for one reason or another. Those kinds of things we have seen through conversations with Chris and other partners about really encouraging businesses to use a private system that doesn't share their information, and making sure that whatever they're putting in there, especially if it's sensitive PHI or legal information or whatever, company secrets, it's not just put out there for everybody to access and get into.
Which is the same kind of information, obviously, you don't share in an unencrypted email. There are obviously parallels.
Yeah. A lot of people don't think about that either still. So.
Yeah, let me send you my social security number in an email.
Yep.
Not knowing that if you send it via Outlook, it's now in Copilot, and if you send it in Gmail, it's now in Genesis. Yeah.
So
not good.
Indeed.
Gemini, sorry.
So that actually brings us to an interesting, Richard, thank you so much. That was an interesting interesting question, and you actually set this up for another topic. And I actually want you to touch on that a little bit further, Tony, before we actually start to get to some of our final questions. You mentioned being aware of infiltration, especially from employees. I think there was either a news article or a case study we discussed about being aware of employees that may not be who you think they are. You want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, we've seen this in the past, more on kind of a corporate espionage type of a thing, but it seems to be making a big comeback or resurgent in recent months here, where you'll have staff coming in to get hired, get access to corporate information, and then take that and use it for their own purposes. We've seen that a lot in the government space with military weapons getting compromised and designs being taken. I happened to meet a guy, and it's been several years now, who his company was coming out with a secure Wi-Fi hotspot where you could go anywhere in the world. It would connect up to that local cellular and provide this Wi-Fi capability for a team that's traveling. And they hired somebody with outside of the US descent, and they worked there about a month and then disappeared. And 2-3 months later, China came out with the exact same product, same form factor, different name, beat them to market. So that kind of thing does happen. And now with AI, we're hearing stories about not only these laptop farms being found in the US and remote workers, but AI being used to pass that interview with flying colors and show qualifications for positions. And now that whole giving somebody the keys to the kingdom when you don't exactly know who they are becomes a little more possible through the technology that we have today.
That's a cautionary tale that people can do more mischief today with less, because AI is great at taking that little bit of information and extrapolating it, hallucinating it, and creating as we say in German, a Scheisstorm around it.
Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah, I'm from Minnesota, and aside from the employment stuff too, the Minnesota passed laws to give out free tuition for college. And now, surprisingly, a couple of years into it, we find that there's thousands and thousands of applications for people that don't really exist. Their identities were stolen, and now they're suddenly applying for college to get this state of Minnesota handout and exploiting it that way too. So it shows up in all levels, wherever it can be exploited. So.
Indeed. I want to point out there that as we look at the intersection and alignment of where some of these warning stories and warning signs in the InfoSec space are mirrored on the AI space, a very real concern that's not just being researched, but is actively being demonstrated are models that have sleeper agent functionality in them. So in the same way, we have to learn and take some real examples of maybe we need to be intentional about employee vetting. We may also need to be intentional about the models that we have, that they may be given instructions that may not activate until certain circumstances or conditions in the environment that aren't just exploits as in, okay, it's going to drop a worm or some malware come out of it. It may subtly give you bad advice. It may start giving you poor sources. It may start pushing you in a way that that's not aligned with your values.
Yeah.
Or much worse, maybe it will be more direct.
Yeah.
And
So go ahead, Richard.
I was just going to jump in, and you hear from time to time, like Anthropic just had some kind of a scenario where they reported that their platform was going off the rails, and you say to yourself, how does that happen? And it's good that they reported it, but the real question is, how often do they report it, and how often do they not report it? The whole black box paranoia that surrounds most of these large language models is the lack of transparency and visibility make one really nervous, or can.
Indeed.
Are you referring
Well,
to the $2 billion settlement
say again, Vinod?
are you referring to $2 billion settlement that they were?
Oh, that was over the 8 million books that they
Mhm.
that they loaded into their model without paying royalties.
Yeah, I don't know, 2 billion or 4 billion.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was enough.
And you also have the Samsung attack where necessarily wasn't an attack, but Samsung's employees were uploading files and things to ChatGPT to
Yep.
just do regular work, and they were up doing a project, and
Yep.
one of their competitors and running around them because they did open source intelligence on ChatGPT that had it all stored in
Yeah. They found their business
packaged
plan.
neatly.
They found their
Yeah.
entire business plan, Nick, and
Yep.
co-opted it. And remember that Samsung lost like $2 billion and lost man hours due to research and development that went up the chute
Yep, they banned all usage of AI from their company at
on
that point.
Samsung devices.
Yep.
Yeah.
But OpenAI should be also responsible for that, right? For exposing.
Oh, yeah.
it.
At the end of
Indeed.
the day, the appetite for risk has to be decided by people who are professionals in that part of that cyber, but there's another element to it, and that's lawyers. We have to understand, like, where do their liabilities lie? And so,
I'm sorry, I'll go ahead.
go ahead. No, what I was
The
going to
act-
say is, at the end of the day, how do you decide what your appetite for risk is? It's what your lawyers tell you it is,
Right.
not
But,
your.
you know,
Good, fair enough.
case example
Before
is a
we
lot
you
of these. Okay, sorry.
finish your thought, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just
Sorry.
going to say a
It's
lot
all
of
right.
a lot of the technology companies like Uber and Airbnb and others, they got into the space without basically hiding behind the veil that they're a technology company, that they were not responsible for rogue agents who were drivers or property managers or anything like that. We're a technology company. And that's the real concern over like OpenAI, who takes no responsibility for hallucinations or learning from your data or the kinds of scenario that happened that Nick mentioned. And the real question is, should there be any culpability on these massive AI companies running these LLMs that basically hide behind the same veil that Uber and Airbnb and other gig economy apps basically do by saying, hey, we're just technology. We're not responsible for the physical or the human agents that use our products to cause mischief.
Indeed. All right, so I'm gonna put that's an excellent question. Before we even chew on that or even attempt to answer that, we'll put a line right here for right now. I want to be mindful of the time and be able to say that we're going to shift toward more of an open QA. We're going to have a hard stop because we're at the 3 minutes after the top of the hour. So if we can't have time to spare, I'm going to say we have maybe another 10 minutes, maybe 5 for just open QA. All right. So if you have a question or discussion point, still raise your hand so we can keep them organized, especially if we go and cut this up, we can go and make sure the questions are in discrete chunks. That being said, if you have to jump, I thank you so much for your time. I'm going to put some extra links in the chat. That's the biggest thing I wanted to do, is to make sure that if anybody jumps, you have all these links and the link to the Threat Busters podcast. Okay. Now that those links are there, Tony, do you want to take that question?
I actually thought it was a great question and probably deserves its own like hour segment because you can go a bunch of different ways around that,
Yeah.
Richard. But yeah, it's technology can be used for good and for evil, and it's hard to try and define where the technology manufacturer is responsible for that. Aside from that, before that was put on the table, I was reminded of conversations I was hearing last week relating around AI and the job market and people. It seems companies aren't hiring, companies are waiting to see how everything shakes out with tariffs and with AI and roles and that kind of thing. And from a broader perspective, there's been a lot of technology shifts over the years, right? You can even go to pre-computers to automobile changed the economy big time. Then computers and AI now is just another evolution. But I think the positive thing is that people that understand the technology and they use it correctly can be ever more successful. And even from a marketing standpoint, people are saying that we're shifting away from the information age back more into more of a trust economy where people aren't sure if they can trust the information, but if they can trust the people they're doing business with, they'll be more comfortable, more successful. So a lot of technology, but it does come down to the humans that are in the game as well.
And the trusting the people part is
Human.
they have to demonstrate an understanding on how to appropriately and ethically and with integrity use AI in the space of what the services or goods or consulting they provide to substantiate that they're a worthy resource or person in that respect.
Yep, exactly.
Indeed. Any other questions? A little bit more of an open QA on this part. I'm really enjoying the cadence that we had. There's a lot of, for some background, a handful of this discussion that we've had briefly on the podcast that Tony and I have initiated. And honestly, with this type of quality back and forth, I might bring in more guest hosts instead. All right, I saw a question, a hand come and go. Alan, go ahead and jump in there.
Yeah, basically, the trust element is part of it, but beyond just the trust, you need guardrails. It's not enough to have behavioral solutions. What you need real guardrails. Now, I think Tony's approach to isolation sounds very promising, depending on can you carry this into the AI itself? And I think that could be done. It has to do with the access of resources. And once you start to have access control, you can do it. So I think it can be done, despite whether it's an AI or whether it's an application. I don't think you could stop it. The other side of the coin is that it's not just a matter of trust, it's a matter of physical reality. Basically speaking, in the same way that somebody from a serious cyber group, and we've got a few people here, would not just look at what was going on in the machines, but it would also look at the access control physically in the building. It's still a matter of what resources are available. Am I wrong? What are your thoughts on that, Tony? What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at, like you said, from a security standpoint or whatever, it is more than just the computers and the people, the physical access. There's many layers to that. But I guess just going back to the point around trust I was trying to make is it's that human interaction, being able to develop a relationship and build trust with other people that really has driven the economy in different ways. And in technology, it's the same way. Getting together in forums like this and throwing around ideas or being a part of industry groups and sharing information and conferences and all those kinds of things help to not only expand knowledge, but build those relationships and trust that ultimately you get to know people and be like, hey, I know, we know Alan, he's a great guy. He's followed through on everything he said, and trusting that in association that the technology, that the whatever it is that you're bringing to the table is going to maintain that level of integrity. So maybe trust by association, if you want to call it that, but there's still a human element there. And I'd much rather buy a similar service from somebody I know and have a background with than just some random website that I don't have a relationship with. And if anything, just have knowing that, hey, I can pick up the phone and call the rep that I've known for like multiple months or years versus trying to find somebody, that I've never met at a support 800 number or whatever kind of a interface. It's,
No, absolutely. Just to on your point, no, I understand what you're saying about trust, and I agree with you. The only thing I'm saying is beyond trust, physical isolation. I think electronic isolation is important.
Yep. Yeah. And quality design of applications too.
Oh,
So
yeah, absolutely.
yep.
That
So
everything comes together. It's
Students
all
in depth
context,
across the
right?
board.
All context.
But who was that philosopher that said trust but verify?
Yeah.
You know. All right. As
Wise words.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Wise words.
Yep.
Agreed.
All right. As we start to wind down, I'm going to put a closing thought on here. If there's anything else, any other topics that you guys want to really get to, please make sure you put them in chat, and we'll make sure those are answered one way or the other. I want to be respectful of our time and of Tony's time, so I will close with this. Guardrails only work if they evolve with the traffic. We started with the endpoint and end user because that's where risk actually lands. From there, we scale in, scale up, teams, systems, and oversight. We prove this works with evidence, not promises. If you remember one thing, decide once, apply many. Be explicit about the intentionality of approval, the intentionality of processes for end users, the intentionality about what's communicated among the people using these systems. And measure. Ultimately, if you don't measure these systems, if you don't measure reality, you have no way to really understand if you're affecting the change you're looking for. All right. This is a pillar of, these principles are a pillar of information security governance and AI governance. It stops being mere paperwork and starts being speed with safety. Tony, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your participation. I thank you for your camaraderie, my friend. I thank you for everyone here for all of that. Again, if you have any other questions, please drop them in the chat. If you are listening to this on the replay, generally this looser Q&A is in the community section, so hopefully you're already a member of the community. Otherwise, if you want to know more about what the Cognify Insight Network is and what we're up to, go to the links in the chat below. Go to community.cognifysolutions.ai. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Great
Thank
event.
you.
Thanks,
Good night,
Tony.
everyone.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming,
Thanks,
Tony.
everyone.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting this on.
My pleasure. All right, and I think that's a wrap.
Well, have a good night, guys.
All
You
right.
too.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks again.
And that's my fathom paused.
I did the same.
All right, cool. How was that? I definitely feel like it could have gone better, but as a baseline, how was that?
Oh, when you say better, what are your instincts telling you?
Better control of conversational flow, better, because I also felt like I was isolated, like Tony, like putting him out to say, answer this question. Like it's supposed to be more conversational. Other than that, I think folks seemed like they were able to get their thoughts out. It was collaborative.
No, I thought for the most part it worked. He obviously was the focal point, so you were wise to introduce. I just tried to interject a question or two. Yeah, I'm a journalist. I'm not a technologist, so I struggle sometimes with all the buzzwords and the acronyms and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's why I try to keep things,
No, that's
within the realm. But again, I think we covered what we wanted to talk about, and I think we didn't knock him off guard or off his comfort zone or space or swim lane. So I thought it went really well.
I was taking care of that too. Yeah. All right, cool. All right. No, that was actually interesting. I might ask Tony if he wants to do that more often.
But yeah, podcasting definitely sounds like a good thing because you guys are both very technical. And I was just thinking maybe I can bring more of a layman's terminology, or obviously coming at it from more of a consumerized aspect and angle of Gen AI products and LLM, and maybe that's a value.
I was thinking we could have a separate podcast.
That's
Just
it.
you and I, and maybe a special guest from time to time.
Yeah, I agree. Clearly, we complement each other well. So yeah, let's do it.
Here. All right, cool. And now having set up 4 podcasts now, I think I'm getting used to at least how to get them started, how to keep them going and keeping this conversational cadence. That's a whole different skill set. Producer versus talent are often two different people,
Yeah,
but
no,
at the very least,
absolutely.
two different disciplines.
Between the two of us, perhaps we can kind of share those duties and responsibilities. Maybe I do the intro while you man the controls, and then toss it over to you once that's out of the way, and then it becomes banter and whatever from that aspect.
Indeed. You know what? Let's put it on top of mind. I won't put time date right now, but let's make it a point to
Let's
soon
come up,
around.
yeah, let's come up with a time and date soon so that we have
Yeah,
something, and hopefully within the next 2 weeks.
yeah. We'll make a pilot episode and just say
Sure.
like, all right, this is how this would go. Let's feel this
Yeah.
out for real.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have to have any live viewers. You can still put out a podcast
Oh yeah,
in that sense, and then hopefully grow it.
indeed. It's funny, just doing it for two people used to be pretty easy with Skype. Actually, even especially just on the audio side, it was just easy enough just with Skype. I don't know how annoying Zoom is to do a podcast, especially if you only want to do audio. We'll
Well, I
figure it
think
out.
we should always do video because, yeah,
Yeah.
because you could always take the video, pop it into Notebook LM, and create a podcast out of it that way if you want. With both of our role, I think the Descript also has a podcast capability where you can upload the video and actually do more of a bona production and editing capability with it. Add your logo and your and whatever else that you want to do. Even B-rolls if you want to get fancy, that kind of thing.
To be fair, I have not set up a video podcast. I've done video editing and video production, but I have not made a video podcast.
It's just really no different than just doing it as a Zoom call instead of an audio. But I think today most people think of Howard Stern. He had a podcast that he basically just filmed it inside a studio, right? All it was, we saw the pictures of what it looked like to do a radio show. But the video portion of it obviously enhanced things a great deal because, yeah, now you have facial expressions, you have people in a physical sense. I'm not saying that our podcast has to go in that direction, but I don't think, I think doing it from a video perspective is fine because you can always separate the audio. That's simple. That's not a problem. But if you do it in a video sense, now you can carve it up into short form, long form content and put it out there, which is more valuable than just audio content.
You may have a point. You may have a point indeed. All
Yeah.
right. Have you ever started or run a podcast before?
Yeah.
Or okay. Have you where you normally take the audio, the files, and your media? Maybe they don't care, especially because I think you're making a lot of sense. I don't think they care. So normally when you take the audio and you put it wherever, it'll take it and disseminate it to all the other podcast platforms. If that's a video file, see like an MP4 instead of MP3, I suspect you can upload it anyhow, and it'll still
if you look at a Zoom, if you look
Apple
at a Zoom
Podcasts.
recording, Zoom does bifurcate the video and the audio. Now the video has the audio, but anytime you do a Zoom, it will create a separate audio only track if you want to just use that. That's by default in Zoom when you record everything on your local drive.
All right, fair enough. All right, that may be moot. That was always easy enough to split. Okay. So all right, so in that case, the video portion would end up going what, to YouTube?
Yeah.
All right.
And then again, you can pop it into Descript and then carve it into long form, short form content and repurpose it for just about anything. I know there are folks that say take a podcast and get 20 different outputs out of it.
Indeed.
It's,
all right. We will do this. We'll figure this out.
Yep.
All right. Sometime in the next 2 weeks, we're going to sit down and do a pilot episode and just explore.
That would be great.
All right. Sweet. Another one in the can.
Well done.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man.
You too. I will see you around.
Take care. Night.
Good night.